Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about Kriya Yoga and the power of mindfulness. So mindfulness is sati sampajanya. So the Pali sati comes from the Sanskrit smrti, which means to remember. And sampajanya is a clear observation of reality. So mindfulness really is about remembering to observe how the mind's attention moves from one thing to the other. So mindfulness is absolutely essential for meditation. Without mindfulness, one is unable to know what state of consciousness one is in. One is unable to recognize unwholesome states and defilements of the consciousness that lead to a defiled or clouded mind. One is unable to be aware that one is attached to something, that one has identified with something, that a hindrance to one's meditation has come up and is preventing one from progressing. So without mindfulness, it's really a crapshoot in meditation. Now in Kriya Yoga, we have a very effective practice, the Kriya Pranayama, for getting into a low idle state. So Kriya Pranayama is a form of intentional breathing that brings about a state of internalization, what is called pratyahara in yoga. And so with this intentional breathing, one can start to be drawn into an internalized state. But without mindfulness, one is unable to navigate effectively through meditative states. And consequently, what can happen is one becomes befuddled in meditation. One can get stuck in a particular meditative state and not be able to progress. One can have challenges with getting into meditative states to begin with. So this is very common with Kriya yogis because they use the Kriya Pranayama, but they don't have mindfulness. So mindfulness is absolutely essential for success in meditation. Now, the thing about mindfulness is that it is part of the 7 enlightenment factors. And if you haven't checked out the video on Kriya Yoga and the 7 enlightenment factors, I highly suggest that you do that. Mindfulness, as I said, is what allows one to recognize what state one is in. This is essential for being able to know what to do in meditation so that the meditation will proceed in an effective manner. This also leads to a state of energy in meditation, which is a 3rd enlightenment factor. It allows one to have an energy or an attention for what is happening internally. This can lead to a state of joy, which is about being able to let go of hindrances and have this arising joy within oneself, which then leads to a state of tranquility. And tranquility is an aspect of meditation that helps the body to disappear, that helps the intentional thinking mind to become quiet and one to go into deeper meditative states. This also then leads to collectedness or concentration, which is the ability to stay with one's meditation object. And this in turn leads to a state of equanimity, which means that the mind is balanced. It is not thrown off kilter by what is happening in one's meditation. So when these 7 enlightenment factors are balanced with mindfulness at the cue of this, the commander, if you will, of the 7 enlightenment factors, one can progressively go into deeper and deeper states of meditation. And a lack of mindfulness increases the risk of acting from a state of ignorance rather than from a state of wisdom, thereby perpetuating negative consequences. And this is especially the case with preconditioned states of mind, what we call samskaras, these karmic seeds, that they incline one to act in habitual ways, which then can perpetuate the same kind of conditions that one is experiencing over and over without being able to move away from that, without being able to progress. And so without mindfulness, one is unable to recognize when a preconditioned influence of the mind has arisen and then follow the same pattern, right? It ultimately leads to a state of unhappiness. So mindfulness is a very effective way to be aware of what is happening in meditation. Now, without mindfulness, one may be able to progress to some degree in Kriya Yoga, but really get stuck in a state of not being able to progress because one is not able to perceive that state as it truly is. So an example of this is when one experiences a blissful inner state, right? And these feelings of this bliss, of this ananda, can start to blossom up from one's awareness, and it is very consuming and beautiful. And one can get into rarefied states where the body disappears, where there's a sense of this infinite space, that expansion, if you will, and then that turns into this infinite consciousness, this bliss state. This is called the 6th jhana. And so people who have had that experience will often become so overwhelmed by that they start to identify with that state. They don't recognize that their mind has moved towards an attachment to the bliss, and that they see the state as the true self, what is called the Atman. And the idea that the Atman, the soul or the true self, is merging with Brahman, the supreme soul, the supreme spirit. So one may be inclined to believe this is an experience of the soul in this blissful realm, in communion with spirit, if you will. But really, that is following the preconditioned aspects, the karmic influences that cloud one's judgment, that clouds one's true perception of what is actually happening. If one looks deeper in that blissful state, one will realize that the bliss has a fluctuation, that it has an arising of consciousness and a passing away of consciousness simultaneously. And that gives the appearance, if you will, of an eternal blissful experience. But really, it is impermanent, that is not lasting, it cannot provide lasting satisfaction, and it is also impersonal. So with keen mindfulness, one can recognize that that is the case, and then release one's attachment to identifying with that state, realizing it is just a temporary state of consciousness, and as well that there is something beyond that. That one can go into a very clear state afterwards where the bliss disappears and one is in a state of nothingness, and there is pure equanimity. But one may erroneously again conclude, if one's mindfulness is not keen, that this is the ultimate state, that this is the true self, when in actual fact there is more beyond that state as well. So mindfulness allows one to pilot and navigate through these different meditative experiences in a very effective way, because by using mindfulness, one starts to realize the patterns that have been laid down, the patterns that form the sense of self that one has. And by recognizing these and letting go of them, one sees the true nature of the internal phenomena is that they are impermanent, that they cannot provide lasting satisfaction, and that they are impersonal. And when one recognizes that and lets go of attachment, that is where the real freedom lies. That is where one can start to see the true experiences, inner experiences, with an unclouded judgment, to be able to see things as they actually are, and to let go of the sense of conceit, the sense of the I am, which is really a projection of identity, a projection of the ego. And so by letting go of that sense of I am within one's inner experiences, one will be freed from the karmic fetters that one has. One will start to perceive things as they truly are. One will let go of attachments. This is where real spiritual progress happens. This is where the rubber hits the road in spiritual development. Without having a keen mindfulness to recognize things as they are and to let go of attachment, one will be waylaid in meditation. One will not be able to understand what state one is in, and one will not be able to progress beyond that state. So when one has keen mindfulness and is able to recognize how the mind's attention moves from one thing to the other and starts to balance the other enlightenment states, one can recognize when an attachment or hindrance has arisen in one's meditation, to see that it isn't the self, to see that it is impermanent, to see that it cannot provide lasting satisfaction, and then to let it go, releasing the tension in body and mind, to smile and return back to the object of meditation, either a wholesome state or whatever one is experiencing in meditation. And this application of mindfulness and right effort is really what leads one towards the goal, which is awakening. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.